just come down in this room, be with us. All right, we 13th chapter of Genesis. We covered the 12th chapter last week. Maybe we'll cover the 13th chapter this week. That's kind of what we're aiming at. I don't know how far we'll get along that way, but just I think it'd be in order to do just a little bit of review from where we came from last week, just to get all of our minds kind of settled here. We're looking at Abram at this point. He later becomes Abraham, but at this point we're going to call him Abram. And Lot, two characters here in the Bible that we're looking at. And I hope that as we talk about these two characters, that you'll make a firm decision in your mind that you want to be like Abraham. Not exactly like Abraham, because Abraham had some problems. He's like a lot of us today. God tells him something, and, sometimes he thinks that he knows what's better or a better way. And that don't work. That don't work well at all. But on the other hand, this is a man of faith. The New Testament talks about his faith. And he truly was a man of faith. Abraham impressed us with the altars that he built, and we talked about the altars last week and what an altar is for. We went into that. I hope that blessed your heart, and I hope that helped you in finding your own altar and talking to the Lord. We won't go wrong, or we won't get sidetracked, or we won't get messed up if we can firmly find us an altar and visit that altar on a daily basis. Often, we can settle things on an individual basis with God at that altar that keeps us out of a lot of trouble. So, let me ask you something. How many, I want to see a show of hands here, because I don't want to talk about something here that nobody knows nothing about. But do you know what a GPS is? How many knows what a GPS? Okay. How many of you use GPSs? Well, that's a lot. That's about everybody. They're a handy piece of equipment. What happens if you've got that GPS zeroed in on your destination and you're going along there and you miss a turn? You keep on going where you're supposed to turn off. What happens then? Okay. That woman on there, she gets right after you, don't she? And that GPS starts routing you back. And they'll say, Proceed to the root. Proceed to the root. And you're sitting there thinking, well, I missed my turn, and that's what I'm going to do. She'll just shut up. I just don't want to hear her anymore. And she says it again, proceed to the root. You know, that's exactly what happened to Abram. God showed him, he told him, he said, look, I'm going to show you, I want you to leave family, leave father, leave where you're at, just leave the family and go to a place that I'm going to show you. Now that's pretty simple. That's pretty simple. And if he had just done that, if he had just did that, he lit out and he landed right pretty close to where God wanted him to land. But there's a problem. What was his problem? Anybody want to tell me? What? Okay. He had baggage. And God couldn't point this place out and show him and tell him as long as that baggage was with him. Now, when we get saved, listen to me real good, because I'm trying to make a point right here. When we get saved, our destination changes. We're on a road, our destination when we're lost is going to be hell. And when we accept Jesus Christ as our Savior, that destination changes to heaven. And God has got a way, it's called straight over in the New Testament. John's writing says that the way is straight and it's narrow, and it says few that be that find it. But that destination is heaven, and I hope everybody sitting here and under the sound of my voice is on that road or in that path, whatever you want to call it. You've got your GPS set right on that. But we're like old Abram a lot of times. We get ideas that steers us off that way. And God has to get us back, proceed back to the root, proceed back to the root. And God just does that. Because he wants us to get there on that straight and narrow way. Now, so Lot gets down there where he's supposed to be. He builds an altar at Bethel. And it's real close now. He's in the land. He's actually in the land that God has prepared for him. But he's got this problem. Well, what does God do? A drought, famine. He can't feed his cattle. And they got to do something here. So what do? They go to Egypt. Now that's several miles off. They continue on south, and then they go west, and they land in Egypt. They get down there. We read in the story. He told that old Pharaoh a lie, a half-truth, that his wife was his sister, which was a half-truth. And so the old Pharaoh finds out about it because God deals with him, and so he finds out that he's lied to him, and so he kicks him out. He kicks him out of Egypt. And so Lot's right there with him. So God uses a famine now, a famine to, what's God doing? He's getting him prepared now to shake off this burden that he's got with him, this baggage that he's got with him. And that baggage is Lot. So this is the first step that he takes to get that done. Now, that brings us up to where we're at now in this 13th chapter here. So let's begin right there and see what happens now. Remember, at this point, Lot's still with him. When he got kicked out of Egypt down there by that old Pharaoh, Lot stayed with him. But they came out of there with a lot of wealth. Actually, both of them did. And that's what we're going to be looking at tonight. So I hope we're up to speed here now and ready to go. And Abram, beginning with the 13th, first verse of the 13th chapter here. And Abram went up out of Egypt. Now, if we could see this on a map, let's just visualize kind of a route that he's going to take, he and Lot. Remember, I say he came through Israel, the land of Canaan. That's where God was going to give him the land. And when he went to Egypt, he had to come on down more south and then take a turn to the right and go into Egypt. And it's kind of down. If you know the topography of that land over there, not too much of the time you're on anything flat. You're either going up or down, especially in the land of Israel. So now as he comes back across. He's going east. Then he comes back and makes that L and takes a turn back up to the left now, and he's headed back to that first altar at Bethel that he built. So let's read it. So he went up out of Egypt, he and his wife and all that they had, and Lot with him, into the south. Okay, so they come back across, and Lot kind of hung more down to the south. Now, I wish that you could see this, and my wife reminded me that nobody back there is going to be able to see this map, and I know you can't. But you can see colors here. This color over here, this is the Great Sea. That's the Mediterranean Sea. And so they have come from way up in here all the way down to right in here above Jerusalem. That's where Bethel, that's where he built his altar. And so when they went to Egypt, they went on down, and Egypt's way over here, several miles. Now, I mean, this is not just a day's travel, or this is a lot going in, because they didn't have cars and stuff to go long distances. Now, when they came back, they come back over here, and then they come back up to Jerusalem, just above Jerusalem there, to the Bethel, where he built his first altar. But it said here, we read it, said that Lot kindly hung to the south. So the south is down in here, and this is the Dead Sea. And so eventually he's going to wind up in Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, Sodom is where the bottom part of the Dead Sea is right now. So it's handy that you can't really see where Sodom was because it's covered with water. But that whole area down there, God destroyed everything. We'll get to that later on. I'll talk some more about that. So anyhow, they're still together, but they're really not together. They've kind of come apart here, but it's a process now that they're going through for Lot and Abram to make separation. See, he's got to shake him. He's got to get rid of Lot, and God's helping him do that. Now, the way that God's going to do that is in a very peculiar way. A while ago, we said that God sent a drought, and he had to go, and so he went because of a drought. Now, when it comes separation time here, guess what God's going to use? This is interesting. This is very interesting. God's going to use prosperity. Prosperity. Now think about that for a minute. Prosperity can hurt you or it can help you. Okay? So, just throwing that in there. So we'll see how all this plays out. So Abram was very rich in cattle and in silver and in gold. God allowed this man, even though he's down there where he wasn't supposed to be, and certainly wasn't wanted, he got kicked out, but somehow or another, God's blessing this man with prosperity, with gold and silver and cattle. And the third verse says, and he went on his journeys from the south. Now, wait a minute. Okay. All right. To the south, even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar, which he had made there at the first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. There is a real message here, and I also want to talk about that for a minute. When you get in trouble, what do you need to do? If you follow the pattern here that Abram followed, what did he do? Somebody talk to me. You go back and start it all over then, don't you? Now, how many times have you got in trouble? You got off on the wrong road. You got off on the wrong track. And God works with you. Maybe had to punish you. Maybe bad things happened, or maybe they didn't. But anyhow, you wanted to get back straightened out with God. You go back to your altar, to your first altar, where you got saved. Do you ever have to do that? Am I the only one that has to do that? Does not the devil tempt you sometimes, and you think, well, am I saved or am I not saved? I'm off in the wrong direction here. Has God left me, or did I not get saved? Or, all these questions come up. And you have to go back in your mind. I was 12 years old, right up here, about 3 miles up the road here, right in pretty close to where the interstate is. Well, that's where I was working. I'd be right in the middle of the interstate now. when Lord saved me. And so that's as far as you can go. And so that's what Abraham done. He knew he knew he was in trouble. He knew that he had to square some things here with God, and he knew God knew, and he's beginning to understand that he's got to shake this problem he's got, and this problem's Lot. So they've got to come apart. And we'll see, let's just look and see how that happens here. The 5th verse says, and Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. Now, it doesn't say anything about him having silver and gold and all that sort of thing like Abram had, but God had blessed him too with flocks, herds, and tents. The tents kind of seems a little odd right here, but what do you use tents for? That's right. So he had a lot of herdsmen, and those tents were a place for them to stay. You got to understand now. These are two men here that's got a lot of people that's depending on them, that's working for them, and minding their flocks and doing the menial labor that needs to be done. So anyhow, let's see what happens here. And the land, this 6th verse, and the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. Now, so what's happening here? We're fixing to get apart. And there was a strife between the herdsmen of Abraham's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanite and the Perizzites dwelt in the land, then in the lands. So not only had they jammed up the process and over-flooded the land with their wealth and their cattle, but there was some natives in that land. The Canaanite were there, and the Perizzites. So they were dwelling there too. So it just got crowded. Just got too crowded. So here God has blessed them now with prosperity. So he's going to use this prosperity to get them apart, get them separated. Now, let's see what happens. And Abram said unto Lot, said, let there not be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdsmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. We be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee. Now this is Abram talking to Lot. Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. Now let's look at that for a minute. Here, is not this a good picture of what a Christian's supposed to be like? Don't you see this man Abram doing the Christian thing? He didn't want trouble. He must have had an unusual love for this nephew. And I just want to make a point right here, and I don't have anybody or anything in mind. I just feel like the Lord's wanting me to say this. A lot of times, we will let our love for a family, for a friend, or for somebody drag us in the wrong direction from God. That becomes baggage to us in our Christian life. Am I getting through here? Does anybody understand what I'm saying? It happens. It happens. And there's many lessons. There's many lessons in this study that we're doing on Abram and Lot. And that's one of the lessons that God has burned into my heart. And I think we need to watch for that. The devil, he's really slick. He can take that love that you have for family or for friends or for whoever or whatever. It's not wrong. It's not wrong. And God wants us to love our families. He wants us to love our friends. But when we let that love and that time and that whatever we're doing, energies, money, whatever it is, that in a lot of cases that really belong to God, but you're spending it on that baggage. Now, God's not pleased with that, and that is wrong, and that is a sin. So, if anybody's in that position, or you know somebody that's in that position, try to help them. Try to help them get out of that, because that's not a good place to be. But that's exactly where Abram was. And so God is using now, he's using this prosperity, this buildup of wealth as a separating tool. So I'm going to stop right there for a minute. And just let you maybe want to make a statement or say something. Speak up. This is what God's trying to use here with us to help us. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, if you read after some of the references in different places on from learned people, they'll tell you that real quick. He gave up his right to make those choices. A lot of times we got to do that. We got to do that. We got to give up our right. If we want to do the right thing, and you want to hold down trouble. You want to avoid bad things. So that's exactly what Abraham was doing here. Now, let's read some more. And so Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord. Man, that was a nice place. Like the land of Egypt. So evidently where they were at down there in Egypt, it was nice, a nice place. It certainly was a place that they could gain wealth and stuff. As thou comest unto Zorah. Zorah was a little bitty city that's kind of on the outskirts. We'll learn that later on when Lot, after God destroys Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot, God tells him to get out of there. Go to the hills. Get away from there. And he negotiates with the Lord and says, just let me go to this little old city, Zorah. Okay. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east. Now, let me look at the map again. East is back over here. So he's down in here now. I wish you could see this, but he's down here in the area of where the Dead Sea's at. Now, let me talk to you just a minute right here, because twice I've been in this area that he's looking at. And let me give you the reason why it was so well watered. That area that he's looking at is 1,300 feet below sea level. It is the lowest place on this planet, Earth, below sea level that there is. 1,300 feet. The Sea of Galilee is 600 feet below sea level. So, from the Sea of Galilee on down, if you follow the river of Jordan, and that's what takes you down into that area there, and waters are going down. It's going down from when it comes out of the Sea of Galilee and gets into the Jordan River. It's going to flow from 600 feet below sea level to 1,300 feet below sea level, and it has no place to go. It just goes down there, and there it is. Later on, we'll see it talk about some slime pits. Well, that's caused by all that water, and don't have a place to go. But Lot saw all that down there. He saw a well-watered plain. Now, a plain is level ground, so it got down there, that water got down there, and it saturated that area. And man, it was a nice place, especially for cattle. Now, the ironic thing about it, when you go on and you look at what Lot did, it gives you the appearance that he just didn't want to farm. He just saw that, and that looked good to him. But when he got down there, the Bible says he dwelled in the cities. And by the way, next week, God willing, we'll be looking at some of those cities down there. In case you just thought when God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, it just got Sodom and Gomorrah. No, there was about 9 more cities down there. And it was a lot of population down there. Each one of these cities had a king. And we'll read about them all getting into a big fight and war, and just like people do whenever they get away from God or they don't know God. So anyhow, I'm jumping ahead here, and I really don't need to be right now. But that's the reason we have that all of that area down there was so well watered and so fertile, and not only does that area down there, was it fertile, but a lot of minerals and stuff. Today, the Salt Sea or the Dead Sea down there is very, very, very valuable They're even digging mud up out of that place and packaging it up. There's a little plant down there now that they package that mud up and sell it, and ladies buy it and put it on their face. Don't they? Y'all got some, didn't you? Okay. But now it's good stuff. I mean, it's really feel. They've even the Dead Sea now is drying up. The shoreline will back off the length of this building about every year. Sometimes more, sometimes less. So it's drying up, and they're building peninsulas out into that Dead Sea, and digging that mud and stuff up off the bottom to get the minerals and stuff out of it. And so it's valuable stuff because it ain't got no place to go. When if it washes off or something up in the river of Jordan, gets down there, it's just there. So anyhow, that's enough for that. Enough history on that. But it's a very interesting, to say the least, a very interesting place in this world. So, okay. So as well, let me move on. The 11th verse, then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan. And Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves, the one from the other. Verse 12, Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain. So that's what we said a while ago. Now he looked and saw all this good place for cattle and place to grow crops or grow whatever. But when he got there, something enticed him more than that kind of business. These cities. Now let me talk to you just a little bit right here and ask you a question. How many of you like the city? You choose the city. You just say, I'm going to get out of these sticks. I'm going to the big city. My wife and I, when we got married in 1962, we were working in Sweetwater at the same place, and we worked 1 week, and we couldn't find a job nowhere, and so we had to move out of Sweetwater. So we went to Tupelo, Mississippi. We went south when most of the kids, and I know that Alan and Pat will understand exactly what I'm saying, maybe some of the rest of you. But most of the kids back in those days went for the car manufacturing. The north really looked good. The big cities in the north, they looked good. And so there were big money up there. You could go up there and make in the car works and make good money. Well, guess what happened? A lot took off. I had a first cousin, him, and they lived in a little community outside of Lenore City up there called Pine Grove, and there was 4 of them, graduated from high school about the same time, so they took off up to Chicago, worked in car works. And they got up there and they was doing fine. So I had to come back home on one weekend, pulled up on the railroad track, about halfway down, Train got them, killed every one of them. In that little community, I'll never forget it. I was just a boy. They had all of their funerals at the same time in that little church, Pine Grove, there in the country out from Lenore City. It was a sad thing. But that happened. But on the other hand, a lot of people went up there and they worked and spent a lot of years and then retired and then come back to Tennessee. So that's what happens. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. Here's the thing, and not many young folks do this. But if you'll pray and ask God to help you and lead you and guide you, He'll show you where to go. And sometimes that may not be the best thing for you to do, is to go where the big money's at. But that's what we do. So we're no different, a lot of us today, than Lot was. I mean, we like to do things and we call it good business. This is just good business. Some of that good business just ain't right. And some of it may be right, but it ain't right for you or me. So that's where we need to pray. And we need to encourage our kids to do that. Because remember, if they're saved, that way is straight and it's direct. And if you're saved, God's got a place in heaven for you, and He's going to get you there. He's going to get you there one way or the other. He's going to get you there. But we want to do detour, and a lot of times we want to do what we think's best. Well, I've got this. I know what I'm doing. Just leave me alone. It's kind of like me when that gal comes on there and says, proceed to the root. Proceed to the root. I want to tell her, shut up. I know what I'm doing. I don't want to hear that. But she keeps on anyhow. Proceed to the root. That's what God does. He just keeps on working with us. When we get out there and we get where we ought not to be, in so many words, He's saying, proceed to the root. Get back to where you need to be. And you know something, I was thinking about that, and I was kind of thinking about when people get out of church. That first Sunday, it really bothers you. Really bothers you. And then that second Sunday, it don't bother you hardly as bad. Then that third, and then it keeps on going, and then that proceed back to the root kind of goes away. And there you are. You're hung out there where you ought not to be, and you're going to suffer consequences over that. I just thought about that when God was showing me all, or as I was studying this, and how many people do it like Lot done it. They just get off out there. They see the good deals. They see a better way. And so here we go. Now, okay, I believe we're going to be okay. I'm going to move along. Somebody tell me where I got to. What verse? 13? Okay, I'm just checking to see if you're staying up with me. So verse 14. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves, one from another. We done read that. And Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and And Lot dwelled in the cities and pitched his tent towards Sodom. That's where we left off. He's in the cities now, and he's going towards Sodom. There's something down there in Sodom that he's got his eye on. Something down there he likes. The Bible don't tell us what that was. But I'll tell you what it does say. Look at what the 13th verse says. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Now, what's he talking about here? Why didn't he say the people down there? Or why didn't he say the men and the women? He just said the men. So what's going on down there? What's God already got his eye on down there that he don't like? There you go. Is everybody ashamed to say that? I am. But boy, we're faced with it today. Everywhere you turn around. Now, if you want to know what God thinks about it, right there it is. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Why do you think that word exceedingly is tacked on there? What does that mean? That's beyond being bad, right? Yeah. Other places in this Bible right here, it's called an abomination. Now, when you look at the word abomination up in the dictionary, you know what it's going to say? That word abomination means? Somebody know? Well, I'll tell you. Extreme hate. Extreme hate from God. So if God says you're doing something that's an abomination, God extremely hates what you're doing. And so this word exceedingly kind of parallels that same thought. Now, here's the good stuff. This is the part I really like. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him. Now, what's that telling us? That's telling us that God couldn't do what he wanted to do, what he's fixing to do here with Abram, while Lot was tagging along, while he was hooked up with him. He was baggage. Now, they're separated. Now, Abram don't have to worry about him. So God's going to do some things here. Let's see what he does. He told him, he said, lift up thine eyes and look from the place where thou art northward. Okay. And then southward. Okay. And then eastward and westward. So now this is going to indicate, here again, you can see the sea over here. Here's the land. All of this is Israel now. So he's just about in the middle of Israel. Looking down, he said to look down south. That's down here. Then he said, what was it next? I've lost my place. Okay, he said to look northward. That's up here. And then it said eastward. That's over here. And then westward's over here. So anyway that he's telling him to look, that's where the land's going to be. Now, this is real interesting. Listen to me real carefully right now. That was according to my Schofield Bible. It's dated. It means it's got a Schofield Bible that you use. Has it got date up there? You don't have it with you. Well, let me just tell you, I looked before I came down here. That's 1920 years BC. BC. What's that mean? Okay. Now, we're on the other side, 2022. You add all of that together and you come up so close with 4,000 years, it's real close. Just within barely a year or so, or 2 or 3. So that's 4,000 years ago. Let's see what he's going to do here with that. He said, for all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. Now, how long is forever? Huh? Don't see no end, do you? Forever. Now, it's been 4,000 years ago. Guess who's over there now? Who's over there, David? Huh? Abraham's seed, the Jewish people. That land belongs to them. According to this, folks, you either believe this book or you don't. And I believe this exactly what he said. And so, you know, people have looked at me real funny when I have said a lot of times, I felt a lot safer in Israel than I do anywhere else that I've been in this world. You know what people think? They think because that outfit to the north of them now, Lebanon, Syria, and all that, has got a gun pointed at them. So if they look now, if old Abraham was over there today, and God told him to do the same thing, and he looked, he'd be looking down a gun barrel. Right? Now, if you're sitting at your house and your neighbor over here has got a gun pointed at you, and the one over here has got a gun pointed at you, and every which way you look, somebody's got a gun pointed at you, what's going to keep you safe? Do you get where I'm going? This is God's business. This is God's promise right here. It still holds true today. You say, well, you know, people's going to do anything they want to do. No, they're not. God made a promise. Jerusalem is the eternal city, folks. It's the eternal city. Did you know that if you build a house in Jerusalem, that there's a city ordinance that says you've got to build that thing out of rock? What would be the reason to build your house out of a rock? Yeah, it's going to be there. It's going to be there. Now, it's had its trouble. It's been invaded. It's that place is in the year 70 or thereabouts. It got overrun. Jesus talked a lot about that, and So it suffered a lot, but it's still there, and it's going to be there. Now, I need to draw everything to a close, so I'm going to finish this chapter. I'll finish reading. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land, in the length of it, and in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. And Abraham removed his tent and came and dwelled in the plain of Mamre, which is Hebron, and builded there an altar unto the Lord. That's the third altar, by the way, that he's built now. And Hebron, if you want to look at this thing a little better when it's over, I'm going to leave it laying up here. But right here, where I've got my finger pointed, that's Hebron, right in the middle. So there's a plain there. Most of this is, a lot of this is mountain area. And when you're in Israel, you're either in a desert. All this is desert down here. You're either in a desert, or you're going down a hill, or you're going up a hill. There's not many flat places over there. And there's a whole lot of rock. And until I was fortunate enough to find out a little bit about that place over there, I always thought about rock. And the tomb that Jesus was buried in was just hewed out of a rock. Well, it just so happens that rock, the rock over there, is malleable. You can work it. It's not like this old limestone that we deal with around here. You got a rock around here, you got a rock, and you can't do much with it. It's not that way with the rock over there. It's malleable. You can work with it. So that's the reason when they built tombs and stuff like that, they hewed them out. Okay, so I'm done. And it's time for us to go. But does anybody have anything you want to say? We've got just a minute or two here. Have we come across anything that stirred a little bit of interest in you? Come back next week. Now, I probably will need to find the most well-educated person in here that has A's in English from the time they were in grammar school, through high school, through college. Because when you read chapter 14, you're going to need to be really educated in pronouncing words. But we're going to tackle that now next week. So if you've got a friend or somebody in the family that's not here tonight, and they're really sharp and well up on how to pronounce words, bring them along. We're going to be able to use them next week. So chapter 14 next week. So, all right, if you will, all that can and all would like to, we're going to follow our traditional thing until we get our pastor come right forward, and we'll gather here in the altar, and we'll be dismissed with an altar of prayer for our pastor, prospective pastor. All right, folks are still coming. We'll wait momentarily till everybody gets settled. I'm not going to call on anyone particular. Just everybody pray in their own manner of prayer, and then when we get through, we'll go home.